My father, Robert Ellison, had been in the ground for less than 2 hours. The dirt was still fresh. My mother was sitting in the corner, sobbing into a handkerchief, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. But my brother-in-law, Troy Mercer, wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the room like he owned it. He stood up near the fireplace, holding a glass of wine he hadn't paid for. He tapped a spoon against the glass, silencing the room. "Listen up, everyone," Troy announced, his voice booming. He put a hand on my sister Vanessa's shoulder. She was beaming, actually smiling, at our father's funeral. We all know how much Robert loved his oldest girl. So let's be clear, the inheritance, the full $3 million should go to Vanessa. That's only fair. That means Grant and his wife get nothing. The silence was heavy. I felt the blood rush to my face. I looked at my wife, Hannah, who squeezed my hand tight. Troy smirked at me, his eyes cold and greedy. But then a calm, deep voice cut through the air. "That is not how the will works," Attorney Samuel Drake said, stepping forward from the back of the room. Troy's smile vanished. He had no idea the war he had just started. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me, where in the world are you watching from? To understand why Troy thought he could walk into my father's funeral and claim $3 million, you have to understand the house I grew up in. It was a nice house. A big, 2-story colonial with white shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn. From the street, we looked like the perfect American family. We had the cars, the vacations, and the smiles for the Christmas card photos. But inside, there was a rot. There was a rule that no one ever spoke aloud, but everyone followed. Vanessa mattered, and I didn't. Vanessa was my older sister by 4 years. In most families, the oldest child is the responsible one, the one who sets the example. In the Ellison house, Vanessa was the hurricane, and my parents were the cleanup crew. I was just the bystander who got hit by the debris. I remember when I was 24. I had just landed my first real job in medical sales. It was a tough entry-level gig. I was driving a beat-up Honda Civic with no air conditioning, waking up at 5 in the morning, and driving 300 miles a day to meet quotas. I was proud of myself. I was building something. One Sunday, I went over to my parents' house for dinner. I was excited to tell them I had been named Rookie of the Month. It came with a small bonus. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was money I had earned. I walked into the kitchen. My mother, Linda, was at the stove, stirring gravy. My father, Robert, was sitting at the kitchen table with his checkbook open. The mood in the room was heavy. "Hey Mom, hey Dad," I said, putting a bottle of wine on the counter. "I have some good news." My dad didn't even look up. He was rubbing his temples, staring at a piece of paper. "Not now, Grant. We have a situation." "What's wrong?" I asked. "It's your sister," my mom said softly. She looked tired. She always looked tired when Vanessa was involved. "She's had a setback." Vanessa lived in a luxury apartment downtown that cost twice what my rent was. She was supposedly working as an interior designer, but I had never actually seen her design anything. "What kind of setback?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. It was always money. "She's 3 months behind on rent," Dad said, his voice tight. "And her car needs a new transmission. She called me crying an hour ago. The landlord is threatening eviction. So let her move to a cheaper place," I said. It was a simple solution. It was a logical solution. My father slammed the pen down on the table. "She is your sister, Grant. We don't let family live on the street." "She's 30 years old, Dad," I shot back. "I'm driving a car that shakes when it hits 60 miles an hour. I pay my own rent. I just got a bonus, by the way. I wanted to tell you about that." Dad finally looked at me. His eyes were glazed over. He didn't hear the pride in my voice. He only heard the noise interfering with his problem. "That's nice, Grant. Good for you. But right now, I need to get this wire transfer to Vanessa before the bank closes." That was the dynamic. That was my life. I sat there at the table and watched my father write a check for $5,000. He tore it out with a sigh, but it wasn't an angry sigh. It was the sigh of a man who loved being the savior. He loved that Vanessa needed him. He loved that she couldn't survive without him. It made him feel powerful. My independence, my stability, it made him feel useless. Because I didn't need him to rescue me, he didn't know how to love me. Over the next 10 years, the gap only widened. I married Hannah. Hannah was different. She came from a family where you worked for what you had. When I brought her home to meet my parents, she saw the dynamic immediately. We were sitting in the living room. Vanessa had just stormed in, throwing her purse on the couch. She didn't say hello to me or Hannah. She went straight to Mom. "I need a new dress for the gala," Vanessa announced. "And I need the credit card." "Vanessa, say hello to Grant's girlfriend," Mom said, but she was already reaching for her purse. Hi, Vanessa said, not looking at Hannah. Mom, seriously, it's on Saturday. I can't wear the same thing I wore last month. Hannah watched this in silence. Later in the car, she turned to me. Does she always act like that? Hannah asked. Yeah, I said. Pretty much. And they just give it to her. Always. Grant, Hannah said, reaching for my hand. That's not love, that's payment. They are paying her to stay a child. Hannah was right, but knowing it didn't make it hurt less. We built our life. We bought a modest house in the suburbs. We had Mason, then Lily. My parents came to the hospital when the kids were born, took a few photos for Facebook to show what great-grandparents they were, and then left. They had to go check on Vanessa. Vanessa was going through a breakup, or Vanessa was stressed about her career change. Vanessa never kept a job for more than a year. She went from interior design to real estate, then to life coaching, then to selling expensive vitamins online. Each venture started with a loan from Dad, a business investment, and ended with a crash. I stopped asking for things. I stopped sharing my wins. When I got promoted to regional manager, I told Hannah. We went out to a nice steak dinner. I didn't call my parents. When Mason made the varsity soccer team, we celebrated as a unit of 4. I created a wall. I thought the wall would protect me. I thought if I expected nothing, I couldn't be disappointed. But the thing about toxic families is that they don't like walls. They want you involved. They want you to witness the drama. A year before my father died, we had a 4th of July barbecue at my parents' house. I was grilling burgers. Hannah was watching the kids play in the sprinkler. It was a rare moment of peace. Then Vanessa arrived. She was 49 years old, but she dressed like she was 25. She was driving a brand new Mercedes. I looked at the car. I looked at Dad. Did you buy that for her? I asked quietly, flipping a burger. Dad took a sip of his beer. He looked defensive immediately. It's a lease, Grant. She needed a reliable vehicle. She's starting a new job in the city. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. You told me last month you were worried about your retirement savings. You said the market was down. Why are you paying for a Mercedes? It's none of your business, he snapped. It's my money. I'll spend it how I want. I know it's your money, I said, but you're enabling her. She's never going to stand on her own 2 feet if you keep holding her up. You're just jealous, Vanessa said. She had walked up behind us. She was holding a glass of wine, smirking. You've always been jealous of me, Grant. Just because you're boring and safe doesn't mean the rest of us can't live a little. I'm not jealous, Vanessa, I said, looking her in the eye. I'm worried. What happens when they're gone? Who pays for the Mercedes then? She laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Daddy's never going to let anything happen to me. Are you, Daddy? She leaned her head on his shoulder. My father, a grown man who had run a company, melted. He patted her hand. Of course not, Princess. I've got you. I looked at Hannah across the yard. She shook her head slightly. Don't engage, her eyes said. It's not worth it. So I shut up. I cooked the burgers. I ate on a paper plate while Vanessa held court, telling stories about her glamorous life that we all knew were half lies. I didn't know then that the clock was ticking. I didn't know that my father's heart was a time bomb, and I certainly didn't know that Vanessa was about to bring someone into our lives who would make her selfishness look like child's play. I thought Vanessa was the problem. I was wrong. Vanessa was just the weapon. The man she was about to marry, he was the one who would pull the trigger. It happened fast, too fast. Vanessa had been single for 5 years. She dated plenty of guys, but they usually ran for the hills once they realized she came with high maintenance costs and zero emotional stability. Then shortly after her 50th birthday, she called a family dinner. I have a surprise, she said over the phone. Her voice was giddy, almost manic. Everyone needs to be there. Sunday night, Mom's making a roast. Hannah didn't want to go. Grant, every time we go over there, we leave with a headache. The kids have school on Monday. I know, I said. But if we don't go, Mom will call me guilt-tripping me for a week. Let's just go, eat the roast, nod at whatever crazy idea Vanessa has, and leave by 8. We arrived at the house at 6 p.m. My mother was fluttering around the kitchen, looking anxious. My father was pouring drinks. And there, standing in the center of the living room, was Troy. He didn't look like the kind of guy Vanessa usually dated. He was younger than her, maybe 42 or 43. He was handsome in a slick, polished way. He wore a suit jacket with jeans, the kind of look that says, I have money, but I'm relaxed about it. His hair was perfectly gelled. His teeth were too white. Grant, Vanessa squealed. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward him. This is Troy Mercer. Troy extended a hand. His grip was firm, almost aggressive. A pleasure to finally meet the little brother, he said. His voice was smooth like a radio DJ. "Nice to meet you," I said. "How long have you two known each other?" Vanessa and Troy exchanged a look. 3 weeks, Vanessa giggled, my jaw tightened. 3 weeks. "When you know," Troy said, winking at my father. "Robert and I were just talking about golf. Seems we're both members at the club." I looked at my dad. He was beaming. Finally, a man he could talk to, a man who seemed successful. I could see the relief in my father's eyes. He thought Vanessa had finally found a winner. "Troy is in. What is it exactly, honey?" Vanessa asked, hanging on his arm. "Investment banking," Troy said quickly. "Private equity mostly. High-risk, high-reward portfolios. I worked in sales. I knew when someone was selling me something, and Troy Mercer was selling himself hard. That sounds impressive," Hannah said politely. "It keeps the lights on," Troy said with a dismissive wave. "But tonight isn't about business. Tell them, babe." Vanessa held up her left hand. A diamond the size of a grape sat on her finger. "We're getting married." The room went silent for a second. 3 weeks. They had known each other for 21 days. "Oh my goodness," my mother cried out, clapping her hands. She rushed to hug them. She was crying happy tears. She was just so relieved that someone wanted her daughter. My father shook Troy's hand vigorously. "Welcome to the family, son. Welcome." I stood there, feeling like I was the only sober person in a drunk tank. I looked at the ring. It was huge. It had to cost $50,000. "Congratulations," I said. The word tasted like ash. Over dinner, Troy dominated the conversation. He dropped names of expensive restaurants. He talked about trips to Dubai and Paris. He flattered my father, asking his advice on business matters that Dad hadn't dealt with in 20 years. He complimented my mother's cooking as if it were Michelin star quality. He completely ignored me and Hannah. He didn't ask what I did for a living. He didn't ask about the kids. He treated us like furniture. When we were leaving, I pulled my dad aside in the garage. "Dad, go slow with this," I whispered. "She's known him for 3 weeks. You don't know anything about this guy." Dad frowned. "You're always so negative, Grant. Can't you just be happy for your sister? He's a good man, he's successful. He's going to take care of her." "Is he?" I asked. "Or is he looking for someone to take care of him? That ring, did you see it? It's flashy. He has money, Grant. He's an investment banker." "Did you check? Did you Google him?" "I don't need to Google him," Dad snapped. "I'm a good judge of character. You should try being supportive for once." They got married a month later. It was a massive wedding. My father paid for everything, of course. The flowers alone cost more than my first car. Troy invited a lot of business associates, loud men who drank too much and hit on the waitresses. I watched Troy during the reception. I watched his eyes. He wasn't looking at Vanessa with love. He was looking at the room. He was calculating the cost of the chandeliers. He was looking at my father like a wolf looks at a wounded deer. The crash came sooner than I expected. 2 months after the wedding, I got a call from Mom. She was crying. "What is it? Is Dad okay?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "Dad is fine," she sniffled. "It's Vanessa and Troy. They're here. There's a fight." I drove over. I walked into the living room to find a scene straight out of a soap opera. Vanessa was sobbing on the couch. Troy was pacing back and forth, his face red. My father was sitting in his armchair, looking old and defeated. "What's going on?" I asked. Troy spun around. "Oh great, the Boy Scout is here." "Grant," Dad said, his voice shaking. "Troy and Vanessa have an opportunity, an investment. It's a guaranteed return," Troy said, his smooth voice cracking with desperation. "Real estate in Florida, but we need liquidity now to secure the contract. The liquidity is tied up in my offshore accounts." "So you want Dad's money," I said flatly. "It's a loan," Vanessa screamed. "We'll pay it back in triple in 6 months. Why do you always have to ruin everything, Grant?" "How much?" I asked Dad. Dad didn't answer. He looked at the floor. "How much?" I demanded. 200,000, Mom whispered. I felt like I had been punched. $200,000. Dad, no, absolutely not. "It's not your money." Troy stepped into my space. He was taller than me, broader. He used his physical size to intimidate. "This is a family matter. Robert understands business. He knows you have to spend money to make money. If you have money in offshore accounts," I said, holding my ground, "then wait for it to clear." "Why do you need my father's retirement savings?" "The deal closes on Friday," Troy yelled. "Dad," I turned to him. "Don't do it, please. This is your nest egg. You're 70 years old." My father looked at me, then at Vanessa. Vanessa was weeping, her mascara running down her face. "Daddy, please, this is our chance. Troy works so hard. If we miss this, we lose everything." The manipulation was so thick it was choking me. Vanessa knew exactly which buttons to push. Dad took a deep breath. He pulled out his checkbook. "Dad," I yelled. "Enough, Grant," Dad shouted. "It is my money, I will help my daughter." He wrote the check. He handed it to Troy. I saw the look on Troy's face as his fingers touched the paper. It wasn't gratitude. It was hunger. It was the look of a man who had just realized exactly how easy this was going to be. I looked at Vanessa. She stopped crying almost instantly. She leaned into Troy, looking triumphant. "You're making a mistake," I told my father. "He's going to bleed you dry." "Get out," Dad said. He wouldn't look at me. "If you can't support this family, get out of my house." I walked out. I drove home to Hannah and told her everything. She held me while I shook with rage. "They chose this," she told me. "You tried, Grant, you tried to save them. Now you have to save yourself." I stayed away for a while after that. I called Mom to check in, but I kept the conversations short. I didn't want to hear about Troy's investment. 6 months later, there was no triple return. The Florida deal had supposedly hit a snag due to zoning laws. The money was gone, but Troy was driving a new Porsche. Vanessa was posting photos of them in Cabo. My father never mentioned the money again. He was too proud to admit he had been conned. He just shrank. He got quieter. He started looking frailer. The stress was eating him alive. He was trying to maintain the image of the wealthy patriarch, but Troy was draining the accounts faster than Dad could fill them. And then, on a Tuesday morning in October, the phone rang. It was Mom. She was screaming. "It's Dad, Grant, it's Dad. He collapsed on the golf course. They're taking him to the hospital." I rushed to the ER, but I was too late. It was a massive heart attack. My father, Robert Ellison, was dead at 72. I stood over his body, holding his cold hand. I felt a mix of grief and terrible, burning anger. Because I knew, as sure as I was standing there, that his heart hadn't just failed. It had been broken. It had been squeezed dry by the demands of the daughter he couldn't say no to and the son-in-law who saw him as an ATM. I walked out into the waiting room. Mom was there in shock, and then Vanessa and Troy walked in. They were wearing tennis clothes. They had been at the club when it happened. "Is he?" Vanessa started. "He's gone," I said. Vanessa let out a dramatic wail and collapsed into a chair. Troy stood behind her, rubbing her shoulders, but I saw his eyes. He wasn't looking at Mom. He wasn't looking at the doctor. He was looking at the air, doing mental math. He wasn't mourning a father-in-law. He was waiting for the payday. "We need to call the lawyer," Troy said. It was the first thing out of his mouth. "We need to secure the assets." I stepped forward. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to smash his perfect teeth down his throat. "My father isn't even cold yet," I spat at him. "Don't you talk about money." Troy looked at me, and for the first time he dropped the mask completely. He sneered. "Don't get high and mighty, Grant. We all know how this ends. Vanessa is the favorite. The money is hers. I'm just making sure you don't try to steal it." I turned my back on him. I went to comfort my mother. I didn't know then that Troy was right about one thing. The war for the money was about to begin, but he was wrong about everything else. He thought he held all the cards. He thought my father was a fool who had left everything to Vanessa. He thought I was weak. He had no idea that my father had one secret left, a secret that was sitting in Attorney Drake's safe, a secret that was about to blow their world apart. The days between a death and a funeral are a strange, gray blur. Time stops, but the world keeps demanding things from you. There are forms to sign, decisions to make, and money to be spent. My father's body was moved to the funeral home on a Wednesday. The funeral was set for Saturday. That gave us 3 days to arrange a lifetime of memories into a 2-hour service. I stepped into the role of head of the family. I didn't ask for it. It just fell on me because the other option was chaos. My mother, Linda, was functioning on autopilot. She sat in her favorite armchair, staring at the wall, clutching a framed photo of her and Dad from their honeymoon. She looked frail. For the first time, I noticed how much older she had gotten. She wasn't the strong woman who ran the household anymore. She was a ghost. "Mom," I said gently on Thursday morning, "we need to pick out the casket. And we need to choose the flowers." She looked up at me with watery eyes. "I can't, Grant, I can't look at caskets. It makes it too real." "I know," I said. "I'll handle it. I just need you to tell me what color flowers he liked." "Yellow roses," she whispered. "He always bought me yellow roses." "Okay, yellow roses." I went to the kitchen to make coffee. I looked at the list of things to do. It was a mile long. Call the newspaper for the obituary, call the pastor, call the caterer for the wake, organize the pallbearers. I picked up my phone and called Vanessa. It went straight to voicemail. "Vanessa, it's Grant, I'm at Mom's. I need help with the arrangements. Please call me back." I called her again an hour later. Voicemail. I called Troy. He answered on the second ring, but I could hear loud music in the background. It sounded like a restaurant or a bar. Yeah, Troy answered. Not hello, just yeah. Troy, it's Grant. Where are you guys? I need Vanessa to help me pick out the music for the service. Mom isn't up to it. Vanessa is indispensed, Troy said. I could hear him chewing something. She's grieving, Grant. Everyone grieves differently. She needed to get out of the house. The energy there is too depressing. It's a house of mourning, Troy. It's supposed to be depressing, I snapped. My father died yesterday. Look, she's really broken up about it, Troy said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. She's taking a mental health day. We're grabbing lunch. Just handle the details, Grant. You're good at the boring stuff. The boring stuff. Burying our father was boring stuff. I need you here by 5, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to meet the pastor. We'll try, Troy said, but don't count on it. Vanessa is very fragile right now. He hung up. I stood in my parents' kitchen, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I was grieving too. I had lost my dad. I wanted to curl up in a ball. I wanted to cry. But I couldn't, because if I cried, nothing would get done. Hannah took off work. She came over and cleaned the house top to bottom for the guests. She made food. She sat with Mom and held her hand for hours. Where is your sister? Mom asked around dinner time on Thursday. She's dealing with things in her own way, I lied. I didn't want to break Mom's heart by telling her that Vanessa was probably drinking margaritas. She's so sensitive, Mom sighed. She always felt things more deeply than you, Grant. I bit my tongue. That was the narrative. Vanessa was sensitive, so she got a pass. I was strong, so I got the work. Vanessa and Troy finally showed up on Friday night for the viewing. Vanessa made a grand entrance. She was wearing a black dress that was tight, short, and inappropriate for a funeral home. She wore oversized sunglasses indoors. She threw herself onto the closed casket and sobbed loudly. It was a performance. I watched people in the room whisper and look at her with pity. Poor girl, they were thinking. She loved her father so much. They didn't see her 5 minutes later, checking her makeup in the compact mirror, looking perfectly fine. Troy found me near the guest book. So, he said, keeping his voice low, did you find the insurance policy? I looked at him. We were standing 10 feet from my father's body. Hello to you too, Troy. Cut the crap, Grant, the life insurance. Robert told me he had a big policy. Where is it? I gave all the paperwork to Attorney Drake, I said coldly. He's handling the estate. Troy's eyes narrowed. Why Drake? We could have handled it. Lawyers just take a cut. Because Drake is the executor, that's how Dad wanted it. Troy didn't like that. He adjusted his tie, looking agitated. Well, tell him to hurry up. Funerals are expensive. We need to be reimbursed. Reimbursed? I almost laughed. You haven't paid for a single thing, Troy. I put the casket on my credit card. Hannah paid for the flowers. And you'll get it back from the estate, Troy said with a shrug. That's all I'm saying. Cash flow is important. The funeral the next day was a blur of black suits and condolences. After the service, after the scene Troy caused about the inheritance, the one where Attorney Drake shut him down, we went to the cemetery. It was raining lightly. We stood around the hole in the ground. As they lowered the casket, I saw my mother sway. I caught her just before she fell. I held her up, her weight heavy against my side. I looked over her head at Vanessa. She wasn't looking at the casket. She was whispering something to Troy. Troy was checking his watch. They weren't saying goodbye. They were waiting for the clock to run out. I realized then that my father was lucky in one way. He didn't have to see this. He didn't have to see his princess bored at his burial. I drove Mom home. I made her tea. I tucked her into bed. Thank you, Grant, she whispered as she drifted off to sleep. You're a good boy. I went downstairs. The house was quiet. Hannah was washing dishes in the kitchen. You okay? She asked, drying her hands. No, I said. I have a bad feeling, Hannah. Troy is desperate. He kept asking about the money. He thinks he's walking away with everything. Let the lawyer handle it, Hannah said. The will is the will. There's nothing Troy can do about it. I hope so, I said. But guys like Troy, when they get cornered, they get dangerous. I didn't know how right I was. The reading of the will was scheduled for Wednesday morning, 4 days after the funeral. Attorney Samuel Drake's office was in an old brick building downtown. It smelled like old paper, leather, and serious decisions. I drove Mom. She was wearing black, her hands shaking in her lap. I don't know why we have to do this so soon, she said. I'm not ready to talk about money. It's just a formality, Mom, I said soothingly. We just need to get it signed so the accounts aren't frozen. Then you don't have to worry about bills. When we walked into the conference room, Vanessa and Troy were already there. They were sitting at the long mahogany table. Troy had a notepad and a pen. He looked like he was about to merge a company, not listen to his father-in-law's final wishes. Vanessa looked impatient. She was tapping her long fingernails on the table. Click, click, click. Finally, Vanessa said as we walked in. We've been waiting 20 minutes. Traffic was bad, I said, pulling out a chair for Mom. Attorney Drake walked in. He was a tall man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He had been my father's lawyer for 30 years. He knew where all the bodies were buried, figuratively speaking. He sat at the head of the table and placed a thick file in front of him. He took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Good morning, Drake said. His voice was grave. I want to offer my condolences again. Robert was a good man. Yes, thank you, Troy said, leaning forward. Shall we get to it? We have appointments later. Drake put his glasses back on. He looked at Troy with a mixture of annoyance and pity. Very well, he opened the file. I will read the last will and testament of Robert James Ellison, dated 6 months ago. Troy's eyebrows shot up. 6 months ago, I thought the will was from 2015. Robert updated it recently, Drake said calmly. I saw a flicker of panic in Troy's eyes. He hadn't known about the update. Drake began to read. It was standard legal language at first. He appointed himself as executor. He left the house and the contents to my mother, Linda. He set aside a fund for the grandkids' education. Then came the liquid assets. The stocks, the bonds, the savings, the $3 million. Regarding the residue of the estate, Drake read, I leave 50% to my wife, Linda Ellison, Troy nodded. Okay, that's fine. Mom will share. And the remaining 50%, Drake continued, I leave to my son, Grant Ellison. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Vanessa blinked. What? Troy froze. Read that again. The remaining 50% to my son, Grant Ellison, Drake repeated. And Vanessa? Troy asked. His voice was high and tight. Where is Vanessa's name? Drake looked up from the paper. He looked directly at Vanessa. The will explicitly states, I make no provision for Vanessa Ellison in this portion of my estate, for reasons she and I have discussed. Vanessa stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. That's a lie, Daddy wouldn't do that. He loved me, I was his favorite. He did love you, Vanessa, Mom said softly from her chair. She was crying. Then why? Vanessa screamed. She turned to me. You did this, you poisoned him against me. You made him change the will. I didn't know he changed it, I said, honestly shocked. I had expected a 50-50 split. This is fraud, Troy yelled. He slammed his hand on the table. I want to see that document. Robert told me specifically that Vanessa was the heir. He told me. Robert may have told you what you wanted to hear to keep the peace, Drake said coolly. But this is his legal document. We'll contest it, Troy spat. We'll sue. Vanessa is the firstborn. She has rights. You can't just cut out a biological child like that. A judge will throw this out. Drake paused. He closed the file slowly. He folded his hands on top of it. That brings us to the difficult part, Drake said. He looked at Mom. Linda, do you want to tell them or should I? Mom put her face in her hands. She couldn't speak. Tell us what? Vanessa demanded. What is going on? Drake took a breath. Troy, you said a judge won't let a man cut out his biological child, and usually you would be right. It is very difficult to completely disinherit a child. He looked Vanessa in the eye. But Vanessa, you are not Robert's biological child. The words hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa laughed. It was a nervous, jerky sound. What? That's crazy. Of course I am. I have his eyes. You have your mother's eyes, Drake said. Mom, Vanessa looked at her. Tell him he's lying. Mom looked up. Her face was streaked with tears. It's true, honey. I was married before. Very young. Your biological father left before you were born. When I met Robert, you were 2 years old. He loved you. He raised you as his own. But he adopted me, Vanessa stammered. I'm an Ellison. My name is on my birth certificate. He intended to adopt you, Drake said. He started the paperwork. But, Drake hesitated. There were complications. You were a difficult teenager, Vanessa. You ran away. You got in trouble with the law when you were 17. The adoption process was paused. And then life happened. It was never finalized. So legally, Troy's voice was a whisper, a horrified whisper. Legally, Drake said, Vanessa is Linda's daughter, but she is a legal stranger to Robert Ellison. She has no statutory right to inherit anything from him unless specifically named in the will, and he chose not to name her. Vanessa fell back into her chair. She looked like she had been shot. Her entire identity, the daddy's girl, the princess, the Ellison heir, had just evaporated. But I was watching Troy. I watched the realization wash over him. I saw the math happening in his head. He had married the wrong sibling. He had spent months charming the father, buying the ring, putting up with Vanessa's drama, all for a payout that didn't exist. He turned to look at Vanessa. The look on his face wasn't sympathy. It wasn't love. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. You told me, Troy hissed at her. You told me it was guaranteed. I thought it was, Vanessa cried. You stupid. Troy stopped himself, remembering we were in a lawyer's office. He stood up. He grabbed his notepad. This isn't over, Troy said to the room, but his voice lacked its usual power. He looked at me, and I saw something dangerous in his eyes. He didn't just hate me now. He needed what I had. Come on, he barked at Vanessa. But Troy, move, he yelled. Vanessa scrambled up and followed him out the door. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was heavy. I'm sorry, Grant, Mom whispered. We should have told you. We should have told everyone. It's okay, Mom, I said, though my mind was racing. I looked at Drake. Is that it? Is it really ironclad? It is, Drake said. The money is yours, Grant, and your mother's. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt vindicated. But as I looked at the closed door, all I felt was fear. Troy Mercer had just lost $3 million. A man like that doesn't just walk away. He gets even. And I had a terrible feeling that I was the new target. We walked out of the lawyer's office into the bright afternoon sun. It felt blinding. Inside that room, everything had changed, but outside, the world was exactly the same. Cars were driving by, people were walking to lunch. I walked close to Mom, holding her arm. She was trembling. I can't believe it, she kept whispering. I can't believe Robert did that. He did it to protect you, Mom, I said. He knew. We reached my car. But before I could open the door for her, we heard screaming. It was coming from across the parking lot. Vanessa and Troy were standing by Troy's Porsche. You are a liar, Troy was screaming. His face was purple. He wasn't the smooth investment banker anymore. He looked like a wild animal. You wasted my time. You wasted a year of my life. I didn't know, Vanessa screamed back. She was crying, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. Troy, baby, please, I didn't know. Don't call me baby, Troy shouted. He threw his car keys on the ground. You told me you were the heiress. You told me the old man adored you. You sold me a bill of goods, Vanessa. I told Mom to get in the car and lock the door. I walked over to them. I knew I shouldn't interfere, but I couldn't let him hit her. And he looked like he was about to hit her. Hey, I yelled. That's enough, Troy spun around. He pointed a finger at me. You knew, you and your little wife plotted this. Nobody plotted anything, I said calmly. You gambled, Troy, you bet on the wrong horse. That's not my fault. It's $3 million, Troy roared. Do you know what I can do with $3 million? Do you know the debts I have? He stopped. He realized he had said too much. Debts? I asked. I thought you were a successful banker, Troy. He sneered at me. Go to hell, Grant. He turned back to Vanessa. She was reaching for his hand. Troy, we can fix this, she begged. We can sue, like you said, we can fight them. Troy looked at her with total disgust. It was heartbreaking to watch, even after everything she had done. My sister was desperate for love, and she was looking for it in the eyes of a man who only loved gold. There's nothing to fight, Troy said coldly. The lawyer was clear. You're nobody, Vanessa. Legally, you're nobody. But I'm your wife, she wailed. Not for long, Troy said. He got into the Porsche. He started the engine. Vanessa tried to grab the door handle, but he revved the engine and peeled out of the parking lot, leaving her standing there in a cloud of exhaust smoke. She stood there for a long time, staring at the empty street. Then she turned to me. I expected her to be sad. I expected her to ask for a ride. Instead, her face twisted into a snarl. This is your fault, she hissed. My fault? I asked, stunned. Vanessa, he just admitted he only married you for the money. He just left you. He left me because you stole my inheritance, she screamed. She walked toward me, her hands balled into fists. You stole my life, Grant. You always wanted to be the favorite. You were always jealous of me. Vanessa, stop. I hope you die, she said. Her voice was low and shaking. I hope you and your perfect wife choke on that money. It was supposed to be mine. She took out her phone and called an Uber. She wouldn't look at me or Mom again. We drove home in silence. When we got to Mom's house, I made her sit down. I checked the locks on all the doors. Mom, I said, we have to be careful now. Why? She asked, wiping her eyes. Vanessa is just upset. She didn't mean it. She meant it, I said. And Troy meant it too. He has debts, Mom, bad debts. Desperate men do desperate things. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa spiraled. She moved back into her old apartment, but she couldn't afford it anymore. She called Mom every day, screaming, crying, begging for money. I can't pay the rent, she would yell over the phone. Troy took the joint account. He emptied it. I have nothing. I can send you a little bit for groceries, Mom would say, her voice trembling. But I can't pay your rent, Vanessa. The lawyer said everything is frozen until probate clears. Grant is lying to you, Vanessa would scream. Grant has the money, he's hiding it. I wasn't hiding anything. The legal process takes time, but Vanessa didn't understand the law and she didn't want to, she just wanted a villain, and I was the easiest target. One night I was at home with Hannah and the kids. We were watching a movie. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Troy. "This isn't over. Fix it or I will." I showed it to Hannah. She went pale. "We need to call the police," she said. "And tell them what?" I asked. "That my brother-in-law sent me a vague text. They won't do anything. Grant, he's dangerous." "I know," I said. "I'm going to install security cameras at Mom's house tomorrow. And at ours." I didn't tell her that I had already started carrying a pocket knife. I didn't tell her that I checked the rearview mirror every time I drove home. I felt like I was being hunted. Vanessa stopped calling Mom. That scared me more than the screaming. Silence meant she was planning something, or that she was talking to Troy again. I found out later that they were talking. Troy had come back to her. Not because he loved her, but because he needed a way back in. He told her he was sorry. He told her his stress made him crazy. He told her that if they worked together, they could get what was rightfully theirs. He turned her weapon against us. He convinced her that Mom wasn't the victim, Mom was the traitor. He convinced her that I wasn't her brother, I was the thief. They fed each other's hate. They sat in her apartment, drinking cheap wine, and talking about how unfair the world was. And slowly, the conversation shifted from, how do we sue them, to what if they weren't here? I didn't know this at the time. I only knew that the air felt heavy. Then came the Sunday of the accident. It was a beautiful day. The sky was blue. The air was crisp. It was one of those days where you think nothing bad can happen. We had all gone to Mom's house for lunch. Me, Hannah, Mason, and Lily. We ate sandwiches on the patio. Mom actually smiled. She was playing cards with Lily. "I'm tired," Mom said around 3 p.m. "I think I'll take a nap." "We'll head out," I said. "I have to prep for a meeting tomorrow." We packed up the car. I buckled the kids into the back seat. Hannah got into the passenger seat. "I forgot Mom's Tupperware," I said. "Wait here." I ran back to the front door, grabbed the container, and walked back down the driveway. My driveway is long. It has a curve near the street. I was walking down the pavement, holding the plastic container. I was thinking about work. I was thinking about the football game later. I heard an engine. It was a high-pitched revving sound, like a car accelerating very, very hard. I looked up. A black SUV was coming around the corner of the street. It didn't slow down for the turn. It fishtailed, tires screeching. Then it straightened out. It wasn't staying on the road. It turned sharply into the driveway. It was aiming at me. Time does strange things when you are about to die. It slows down. I saw the sun reflecting off the windshield. I saw the grill of the car. It looked like a mouth with metal teeth. I didn't think, I didn't have time to decide. My body just reacted. I threw myself to the right, into Mom's azalea bushes. The SUV roared past me. I felt the heat of the engine. The side mirror clipped my shoulder, a sharp, cracking pain. The car smashed into the stone pillar at the end of the porch. Crunch, glass shattered. The horn started blaring. I was lying in the dirt. My shoulder was screaming with pain. I could taste blood in my mouth. "Grant," Hannah was screaming. I looked up. Hannah was running from our car. The driver's door of the SUV opened. Troy fell out. He looked dazed. Blood was trickling from his forehead. He looked at me, lying in the bushes. For a second, just 1 second, I saw disappointment in his eyes. He hadn't hit me square on, he had missed. "Oh my God," Troy yelled, suddenly acting. He grabbed his head. My brakes. My brakes locked up, I lost control. I stood up slowly. My left arm was useless, it hung by my side. "You tried to kill me," I said. My voice was quiet, but I knew it was true. "No. No," Troy shouted, looking around to see if neighbors were watching. "I was coming to talk, to make peace. The pedal got stuck, it was an accident." Neighbors were coming out of their houses. Sirens were wailing in the distance. I looked at Troy. He was playing the victim. He was good at it, but I wasn't dead. And that was his biggest mistake. The hospital room was white and cold. My shoulder was dislocated and I had 3 broken ribs. I was bruised from my hip to my neck. But I was alive. The police had questioned Troy. He stuck to his story. Mechanical failure. Confusion. Panic. Without video evidence or a witness who saw his face inside the car, they couldn't charge him with attempted murder. They charged him with reckless driving. He was out on bail in 4 hours. It made me sick. I was lying in the bed watching the news when the door opened. I expected Hannah, or the nurse. It was Vanessa. She walked in slowly. She wasn't wearing her usual flashy clothes. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. She looked tired. She stood at the foot of my bed. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't look at my sling. "You're surprisingly hard to kill," she said. Her voice was flat, no emotion, just a statement of fact. I stared at her. "Is that a joke, Vanessa?" "Troy is a mess," she said, ignoring my question. "His car is totaled. The insurance won't cover it because he was charged with reckless driving. We don't have a car now." "I don't care about his car," I said. "He tried to run me over." "He said it was an accident," Vanessa said. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "He said he was coming to apologize to Mom." "At 60 miles an hour in her driveway," Vanessa shrugged. "He drives fast." "You know that?" "Vanessa," I said, leaning forward, wincing at the pain in my ribs. "He tried to kill me. If I hadn't jumped, I would be dead. Do you understand that? Your husband tried to kill your brother." She looked me in the eye. Her eyes were empty. "Maybe if you hadn't stolen our money, he wouldn't be so stressed. People do crazy things when they're backed into a corner, Grant." I felt a chill go down my spine. She wasn't here to comfort me. She was here to justify it. She had convinced herself that I was the cause of the violence. "The money isn't yours," I said firmly. "It never was." "It should have been," she snapped. Her voice rose. "I'm the oldest, I'm the one who needs it. You have a job, Grant. You have a perfect little life. Why do you need $3 million just to hoard it?" "It's not about need," I said. "It's about what Dad wanted." "Dad didn't want this," she yelled. "You tricked him." "Get out," I said. "I was too tired for this." "Get out of my room." She smirked. It was a cruel, ugly look. "You think you've won, don't you? You think because you're still breathing you won." "I'm alive," I said. "That's a win." "For now," she said. She turned to leave. "Vanessa," I called out. She stopped at the door. "You should know something," I said. "Before the accident, before all of this, Mom made a decision." Vanessa froze. "What decision?" "She knew Troy was dangerous," I lied. Well, it was a half-lie. Mom was scared, but I had pushed the paperwork. She signed her share of the estate over to a trust yesterday. A trust managed by me. Vanessa turned around slowly. Her face went pale. "What?" "If anything happens to me," I said, holding her gaze, "the money doesn't go to Mom. It doesn't go to next of kin. It goes into a locked trust for Mason and Lily, and if anything happens to Mom, the money is already in my name." I watched the realization hit her. "So," I continued, "killing me won't get you a dime. Killing Mom won't get you a dime. The money is gone, Vanessa. It's out of your reach forever." It was a bluff. The paperwork was drawn up, but Mom hadn't signed it yet. But Vanessa didn't know that. She stared at me with pure hatred. Her hands were shaking. "You bastard," she whispered. "Tell Troy," I said coldly. "Tell him his math is wrong." She stormed out of the room. I fell back onto the pillows, sweating. My heart was racing. I knew I had just painted a bigger target on my back, but I also knew I had to take away their motivation. If there was no money to be gained by hurting us, maybe they would stop. I was wrong. I underestimated how much hate they had. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about revenge. And now they weren't going to come for me. I was too alert. I was too difficult. They were going to go for the weak link. 2 days later, I was discharged. I went straight to Mom's house. I was going to move her in with us. I didn't want her living alone. But when I got there, her car was in the driveway. The front door was unlocked. "Mom," I called out. The house was silent. I walked into the kitchen. There were dirty dishes in the sink. That wasn't like her. Mom was a neat freak. "Mom," I yelled louder. I went upstairs. Her bedroom door was open. She was lying in bed. The curtains were drawn. The room smelled stale. "Mom," I sat on the edge of the bed. She opened her eyes. They were glassy and unfocused. She looked drugged. "Oh, hello, Grant," she slurred. "Vanessa." Vanessa gave me my medicine. "Vanessa was here?" I asked, panic rising. "Yes," Mom smiled weakly. "She's being so good. She said she wants to take care of me. She said you were busy." I looked at the nightstand. There was a new bottle of pills there. It wasn't her blood pressure medication. It was something else, strong sedatives. And next to the pills, her jewelry box was open. Her diamond earrings were gone. "Where is she, Mom?" I asked. "She went to the bank," Mom mumbled. "She said she needed to help me organize my accounts." I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't given up. They had just changed tactics. They weren't trying to kill us with cars. They were going to kill us slowly, from the inside out. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police. "My name is Grant Ellison," I said. "I want to report an elder abuse case and a theft in progress." The police arrived at my mother's house 10 minutes after I called them. I met them in the driveway, my arm still in a sling, my ribs aching with every breath. "It's my mother," I told the officers. "She's being drugged. My sister is in there and she's stealing from her." We went inside. Vanessa was in the kitchen, casually making tea. When she saw the uniforms, she didn't panic. She put on her mask, the face of the concerned, loving daughter. "Officers," she asked, her voice trembling just enough to sound innocent. "What's wrong? Has there been an accident? I'm afraid your brother has raised some concerns about your mother's welfare," one officer said. "Grant is confused," Vanessa said, shooting me a pitying look. "He's on heavy painkillers from his car accident. He's paranoid. I'm just here taking care of Mom. She's been so frail since Dad died." They went upstairs to check on Mom. She was awake but groggy. When they asked her if she felt safe, she looked at Vanessa standing in the doorway and she nodded weakly. "Vanessa is helping me," Mom whispered. The police turned to me. "Sir, she says she's fine. Unless you have power of attorney or proof of physical abuse, we can't remove a family member from the home. This is a civil matter." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them, but I knew that would only make me look unstable. "Fine," I said, "but I'm watching you, Vanessa." Vanessa smiled as the police left. "Don't worry, Grant. I'll take great care of her." For the next month I was locked out. Not physically, I still had a key, but emotionally. Every time I visited, Vanessa was there, hovering. Every time I called, Vanessa answered. "She's sleeping," Vanessa would say. "She had a bad night, don't wake her." I felt helpless. I hired a private investigator to watch the house, but he couldn't see what was happening inside. But he did see the bank records. "Grant," he told me over the phone one evening, "you were right. The debit card activity is off the charts. Liquor stores, high-end boutiques, cash withdrawals at the casino. Is it Mom's card?" "It is. And unless your mother developed a gambling addiction and a taste for designer handbags in the last 3 weeks, she's not the one spending it." I took the evidence to Adult Protective Services. They opened a case. But bureaucracy is slow and greed is fast. The end came on a Tuesday. I got a call from the paramedics. "Mr. Ellison, we're at your mother's residence. You need to come now." "Is she?" "She's alive, but barely. We're transporting her to St. Jude's." I beat the ambulance to the hospital. When they wheeled her in, I didn't recognize her. She had lost 20 pounds. Her skin was gray. Her hair was matted. The doctor came out an hour later. He looked grim. "She has severe dehydration," he said. "Malnutrition. But the real problem is her blood toxicity. She has a lethal amount of sedatives in her system. And she hasn't taken her heart medication in weeks." "She didn't forget," I said, my voice shaking. "She was withheld." I went into her room. She was hooked up to tubes and wires. She looked so small in that bed. She opened her eyes. They were clear for the first time in weeks. The drugs were flushing out of her system, leaving only the truth. "Grant," she rasped. "I'm here, Mom." I took her hand. It was ice cold. "I tried," she whispered. I tried to tell her to stop. "I know, Mom." "Troy," she said. Troy was mixing the medicine. He told me it was a new prescription. He made me sign papers, Grant, blank papers. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I think they took everything." "It doesn't matter," I said, crying freely now. "Money doesn't matter, we'll fix it." "I'm tired, Grant," she said. "I miss your father." "Don't say that, you have to fight." She squeezed my hand. "Take care of Mason and Lily. Don't let the hate eat you, Grant, be better than them." She closed her eyes. She slipped into a coma that night. 2 days later, her heart, already broken by grief and weakened by poison, stopped beating. I stood by her bedside as the monitor flatlined. The high-pitched tone filled the room. I didn't feel sadness immediately. I felt a cold, hard rage. It started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. Vanessa and Troy had killed her. Maybe not with a gun or a knife, but with neglect, with greed. They had looked at a grieving, elderly woman and seen a piggy bank to be smashed open. I walked out of the hospital room. I called Attorney Drake. "She's gone," I said. "I'm so sorry, Grant," Drake said. "I don't want condolences," I said. "I want justice. You said you had a plan." "I do," Drake said. "The funeral is set for Friday." "Yes." "Let them come," Drake said. His voice was hard. "Let them think they won. And then, bring them to my office." We buried my mother next to my father. Vanessa arrived in a limousine. She wore a black veil and leaned heavily on Troy, sobbing loudly for the cameras. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Troy looked solemn, but I saw him checking his phone during the eulogy. He was probably checking the bank balance, waiting for the transfer. They didn't speak to me. They stood on the other side of the grave, surrounded by a few of Mom's friends who didn't know the truth. Vanessa told everyone how she had cared for Mom until the very end. She soaked up the sympathy. After the burial, I walked over to them. "Attorney Drake needs to see us," I said. "For the reading of Mom's will." Troy's eyes lit up. This was it, the moment he had killed for. "Of course," Troy said, trying to hide a smirk. "We need to settle affairs." We met in the same conference room where, months ago, they had learned about Vanessa's lack of inheritance from Dad. This time, the atmosphere was different. Troy sat with his legs crossed, confident. Vanessa was checking her makeup in a compact mirror. Attorney Drake entered. He didn't sit down. He stood at the head of the table, looking down at them. Linda Ellison's will is simple, Drake began. She leaves her entire estate to be divided equally. Troy squeezed Vanessa's hand. I saw the triumph on his face. Finally. To be divided equally between her two children, Grant and Vanessa. Yes, Vanessa breathed out. Finally, justice. However, Drake continued, raising a hand, we must address the assets. What assets? Troy asked. The house, the savings, the remaining insurance money. The house, Drake said, is currently in foreclosure proceedings due to unpaid taxes and a second mortgage taken out 3 weeks ago. Troy froze. The savings accounts, Drake flipped a page, are empty. Over $200,000 was withdrawn in cash over the last month. Well, Mom spent a lot, Vanessa said quickly. Medical bills. And the remaining portfolio, Drake said, ignoring her. The $3 million that passed to her from Robert. Yes, Troy leaned forward. Where is that? That, Drake said, does not exist in her estate. The room went silent. What do you mean? Troy's voice was a growl. She inherited it. It has to be there. 6 months ago, Drake said, looking at me, right after Robert died, Linda was terrified. She was afraid someone might try to take advantage of her grief, so she signed a transfer instrument. She moved the bulk of the capital into an irrevocable trust for her grandchildren, Mason and Lily. Drake smiled. It was a shark smile. Grant is the sole trustee. Linda didn't own a penny when she died, Troy, which means you inherit nothing. Troy stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You lie, he screamed. We checked her papers. There was no trust. We kept the papers at my office, Drake said calmly, for safekeeping. Vanessa started to cry. But I took care of her. I gave up my life for her. I deserve that money. You didn't take care of her, I said quietly. You killed her. Shut up, Troy yelled. He turned on Vanessa. You said she hadn't signed anything. You said we had time. I thought we did, Vanessa wailed. All that work, Troy shouted, pacing the room, his hands in his hair. All that time pretending to be nice to that old witch, mixing her pills, cleaning up her filth, and for what? For nothing. The room went deadly quiet. Troy stopped pacing. He realized what he had just said, mixing her pills. He looked at Drake. Drake wasn't looking at papers anymore. He was looking at a small device sitting in the center of the table, a digital recorder. The red light was steady. Thank you, Mr. Mercer, Drake said. That clarifies things. What is that? Troy whispered. This meeting is being recorded, Drake said, and your statement regarding mixing her pills combined with the toxicology report from the coroner. Well, it paints a very clear picture. Troy lunged for the recorder. The door to the conference room burst open. 2 police detectives stepped in. I had been waiting for them. Troy Mercer, the lead detective said. You are under arrest for fraud, elder abuse, and suspicion of homicide. Troy looked at the window, thinking about running, but he was cornered. It wasn't me, Troy screamed, pointing at Vanessa. She did it. She fed her the pills. I just told her which ones. He's lying, Vanessa shrieked. He made me do it. He said if I didn't, he would leave me. They turned on each other instantly. The love, the marriage, the partnership, it all dissolved the second the handcuffs came out. They were like rats in a sinking ship, climbing over each other to breathe. I watched as the officers cuffed Troy. He was crying now, begging, blubbering about how it was all a mistake. Then they cuffed Vanessa. She looked at me as they dragged her out. Grant, please, she begged. I'm your sister. Don't let them take me. I'm family. I looked at her. I saw the sister I used to play tag with. I saw the sister I had tried to protect for 40 years, but that person was gone. My family is safe at home, I said. You're just a stranger who killed my mother. They led them away. I sat in the chair, listening to the silence. Are you okay? Drake asked. I took a deep breath. My ribs still hurt. My heart hurt more, but the fear was gone. I will be, I said. The trial took a year. It was ugly. The newspapers loved it. The $1 million murder, they called it. Troy tried to plead insanity. It didn't work. The recording in the lawyer's office, combined with the bank records and the testimony of the doctors, buried him. He was sentenced to 25 years for manslaughter and fraud. Vanessa, that was harder. The jury went easier on her. They saw her as a victim of Troy's manipulation. In a way, she was. But she was also a willing participant. She was sentenced to 8 years. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to see them go to prison. I already knew they were gone. Life moved on. Hannah and I renovated the house. We put the past in boxes and stored it in the attic. The $3 million, the money that had destroyed my family, sat in the trust. I didn't touch it. I didn't want it. It felt cursed. I set up a scholarship fund in my parents' names. I donated to elder abuse prevention charities. I made sure Mason and Lily would have college paid for. But we didn't buy fancy cars. We didn't move to a mansion. We stayed who we were. One Sunday, about 2 years after everything ended, I was in the backyard. I was grilling burgers, just like I used to at Dad's house. Mason was kicking a soccer ball. Lily was reading on the porch. Hannah was laughing at something on her phone. It was simple, it was quiet, it was boring, and it was perfect. I thought about Vanessa, sitting in a cell, alone with her bitterness. I thought about Troy, rotting in prison, thinking about the money he almost had. They had chased the golden goose until it led them off a cliff. They thought money was the prize. They didn't understand that the prize was this. The prize was sitting in the sun, eating a burger, knowing that the people around you loved you for you, not for what you could give them. The prize was sleeping at night without checking the locks. The prize was peace. I looked up at the sky. It was a bright, clear blue. "We made it, Dad," I whispered. "We made it, Mom." I flipped the burger. I called the kids for dinner. We sat around the picnic table, holding hands. "Grace?" Hannah asked. "I'll say it," I said. I looked at my family, my real family. "Thank you," I said, "for the food before us, for the roof over us, and for the love between us. That is enough. That is everything. Money never destroys a family. Greed does. And no inheritance is worth losing your soul. If you've ever had family tear themselves apart over money, or if you've had to walk away from toxic relatives to save your own peace, tell me where you're listening from tonight. I want to hear your story.